I've really wanted to write this book for about 5 years, and it came out of an interest that I have in food and cooking, but it also came out of an interest and a real recognition that food is a really expressive medium for understanding identity, culture, and particularly class. Well, it was a kind of a combination of my two interests, which one was food, and because I'm a kind of a pretty active cook and always been fascinated with food, and the other was a real interest in how we can understand Australian society and particularly Australian inequality in Australia. And I was kind of frustrated with the kinds of writing we see about food in Australia. It's all very interesting, you know, history of the artichoke and, you know, the comings and goings of truffle oil and all those kinds of things, which interest me, but don't actually speak to, I think, how the majority of Australians eat and what that means. Everybody connects with food, everybody has food stories, everybody feels like food is something that they can talk about at some level. And so it's a really interesting and kind of creative and in a sense kind of common way to understand who we are as a society. If close to your house is 7 or 8 fast food outlets, but you know, no vegan eatery, and that's what you've grown up with, that's your context, then you've got a predilection to eat that way. I mean, people in many ways, people have to take the easiest option. What is closest, what is cheapest, what's there, what's available. Geographical location and the inequalities around that creates different kinds of Australia. People talk about the split between rural, regional and urban Australia, but even within urban Australia, even within the suburbs, what people sometimes call postcodes of poverty, but it's, I think, bigger than that. We've seen how place can influence people's capacity, access to the things that they need most. Well, I certainly think that even a sober reading of statistics on children and overweight and obesity, and we need to make a distinction between those two, shows that there has been an increase. And you know, you don't have to be Einstein to work out why that's the case. But I think the problem that I have with a lot of the way that this phenomenon gets reported is it tends to be sensationalised and also tends to be generalised in ways that actually mask the real issue of the problem. To call something an epidemic, you know, that kind of language of contagion is, I think, in many ways sensationalised. There's certainly an increase, but the real issue is the really worrying increase in terms of long-term health for the child generation that we have now. It's really focused on kids from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander backgrounds, and certain other ethnic backgrounds, including Pacific Islander backgrounds. The blame is almost always sheeted home on the mother. Even though people talk about, you know, wanting to ban certain kinds of advertising of certain kinds of foods, people do blame processed foods. At the heart of it, there's very much an argument that the reason why kids are fat is because their mothers are lazy, stupid, weak, and all the rest of it, and how they've raised their children. There's a gender gap in the kitchen that remains. Men are pretty happy to barbecue, they're pretty happy to occasionally do a special meal on the weekend, but it's really women are the shoppers and the cookers. And that's not just because they're working part-time, it's a gendered reality that seems almost hard, it's very, very hard to shift. So it is a bit of a mystery to me. And I think all the Jamies in the world aren't going to change it anytime soon. I think we're headed to a food culture which reflects the deep divisions in Australian society. And those aren't just divisions in terms of income and economic class. They're divisions in terms of who has the time to cook, who lives in certain places where there's access to terrific food. So it's about, we see our food culture really reflecting the divisions around income, place and time in our society. It's, I hope, an insight into a range of communities and a range of issues that are pretty pressing right now.